Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Steve Holtz. I'm Director of Content at CSP and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Today's webinar is titled Affordable Store Remodels, One Category at a Time. It's presented by CSP and GSP. You can interact with our speaker by typing in questions at any time using the Q&A widget on your screen. We will answer questions live at the end of the presentation. You can also customize your window by moving and resizing the panels. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please use the help button at the bottom right of your screen. And please note that you may need to enable Flash on your computer in order to optimize the webinar audio and slide deck. We're also recording today's session and we'll email you as soon as the recording is available if you'd like to replay. Now, I'll pass things over to our first speaker. Margaret Sotrop is Executive Creative Director at GSP. Margaret, it's all yours.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. Really, thank you for joining us today. My name is Margaret Sotrop. Today, I really want to speak to you all about an important initiative at GSP called Retail Environments. At GSP, when we think about retail environments, it really means that we go above and beyond to help our clients create innovation in the retail environment space. We handle anything from a complete store remodel to a simple decor refresh. Whether it's creating a new brand or moving your brand forward, our goal is to take an approved concept and apply it to your stores. We also create custom rollout packages to meet your needs. Really, in short, we make retail better. When we think about retail environments, we really kind of break it into what we call three buckets. We think of retail environments as new stores, store remodels, and today what we're going to focus on is category reimaging. It's really the most affordable category that we can talk about today. As you can imagine, store remodels are more popular than ever. According to a recent CSP survey, 72% of retailers would love to remodel their stores. However, if budgets and time constraints don't allow for a complete remodel, you may want to consider a category reimage. In this discussion, we will share tips on where to begin. And as you will discover, it is not as difficult as you may think. A category update can easily give your C-store the perfect refresh look. Whether it's updating your fountain, coffee, or food service area, the opportunities are really very endless. Most important is to have a plan. You can do one category at a time, or you can space them out. But knowing your long-term goal and where you want to make brand impact is key. In this roundtable discussion, you'll hear from leading C-store experts about new and exciting reimaging ideas, ways to save time and money, and innovative ideas. You will leave this webinar understanding all about a category reimage, from idea to installation. There will be plenty of Q&A time at the end, so if there's anything you've ever wanted to know about a category refresh, this is your opportunity to ask a design services professional. Here are some questions you may be starting to ask yourself. Where do I start? What options make the most sense for my store? To start with, I'd like to share some examples of what category reimaging is all about. With this is just a great example of a coffee refresh. We created impact from the store entrance. So as you walk in the front door, you see this destination. Using both lifestyle and product imagery, we use clean, readable typography for strong messaging. We made a point to incorporate the client's promise to the customer. If it's not fresh, it's free. We also considered the translite and equipment graphics, which really pulled the whole brand together. Here's an example of the fountain area refresh. It's a combination of, again, lifestyle images and impactful graphics, which gives the brand a refreshed and modern, updated look. and ties the whole store together. It really does seem that the newest category that our clients are asking us to touch is to update and drive sales in their beer cave, rather by updating the beer cave or adding some new graphics to the existing beer cave. These are two examples of what an update can do and add impact and make this destination a go-to in your store. Now I'd really like to talk about what we're here today, and that is really to talk about our partnership with Circle K. But first, let me introduce our GSP panelists for our roundtable discussion. I'd like to introduce Joe DiStefano. He's our Director of Visual Merchandising, and Heidi Barnhart, Market Manager for Circle K Global. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself and then hand it over to Heidi. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Joe DiStefano. Welcome today. A little background: I've been in the industry for over 28 years in POP and design. I have been at GSP for 12 plus years, and in my current role at GSP for 10 years. And over to you, Heidi.
Thanks, Joe. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is Heidi Barnhart, and I've been with GSP for 13 years and have held previous positions as an account manager and a senior account manager. I'm currently in a market manager position, and I oversee the Circle K Global Brand Initiative. And our team works side by side with the Circle K brand teams to ensure the integrity of their brand is maintained throughout our retail marketing and execution process. Under the retail environments umbrella, we really focus on their brand development and bringing that to life while keeping the integrity of their brand alive. And over my career, I've held similar positions within the print and retail industry for over 25 years. And we're super excited today to introduce a very special guest to our panel. This person has really played a significant role in our success with retail environments with Circle K. She is a true partner in the planning and strategic planning process and implementation of these high-profile programs. Please welcome Lisa Childers, Director of Facilities of South Atlantic, to our panel.
Wow, Heidi, that was an awesome introduction. I appreciate that. Good day, everybody. I've been in the industry just over 20 years, mostly in operations. And in 2008, I began my career at Circle K as a district manager, held other positions during the last few years, and finally found myself in facilities, eventually moving into the Director of Facilities position here in Waycross, Georgia for the South Atlantic Business Unit. I am very excited to be joining everybody today, especially GSP in this presentation, and I'm going to send it back over to Heidi so we can get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. So let's just talk about the challenge for a minute. A couple years ago, Circle K went through a global rebranding of their logo and their signature brands. And their goal was to create a unified brand globally and to breathe new life into some of their existing proprietary brands. By proprietary brands, I'm talking about their fountain brand Polar Pop and their frozen brand Froster. And they were making investments in some new equipment that would allow for a broader breadth of flavor choices and increase the number of dispensing valves in their stores. In some cases, they had extensive remodeling that they needed to accommodate the new equipment, expanded equipment, and they needed to refresh the permanent graphics to bring new life to the brand and their new brand in the stores. And then there were certain maintenance and safety requirements that we needed to consider in the design and the installation of the permanent graphics. And last but certainly not least, they had a really aggressive installation schedule of their equipment and deadlines to meet. Knowing the challenges of this project, we knew that we really needed to align with Lisa and Circle K to forge a strong partnership. And this partnership really was key into us being able to take a deep dive into the overall scope of the project and set some expectations. This opened a clear line of communication about the strategy and to talk about their budget, and then to address the client needs and get a clear path on execution. And Lisa, you might want to elaborate just a little bit more on the importance of this partnership.
Sure, absolutely. So as Heidi was saying, one of the most important aspects of any project is to not only surround yourself with people who know the industry, very important, but also what goes into our C-store projects. And so that can be kind of a multi-level, multi-tiered thing, right? So we all get into our projects, and we really want somebody that understands where we are and where we want to go. But we also need people who are able to help drive our sales and bring attention to that targeted category. You know, we don't always have a lot of time and budget, you know, with budget constraints to do the projects we want in the way we want to do them. So we need to find somebody that can actually help us out, drill that down a little bit, and just focus on that one area. The second thing is to develop a rapport with the vendor partners. And realizing, and this is kind of an old adage, realizing that we don't have that normal timetable. So, you know, we go on dates and we get married and we have a honeymoon phase, then we get into a marriage. Well, with your vendor partners, you don't always have that allowability. You don't have that time to do the dating and the honeymoon phase. You need to get right past all that and get into that second year of marriage where you know there's going to be some hiccups. And you got to get around those quickly and you got to get back to that task on hand. What's going on with the projects? Where do we need to go? How are we going to get there? But like any partnership, you have to be able to look at your projects with both the short-term and the long-term solutions. So that as your projects change, you can change with them with minimal disruption. One of the important things in our industry is that we have minimal disruption to our customers, to the people that work in our stores, our external to customers, our vendors, etc. And it's important in any project, especially remodels of any tier, that you are forward-looking and you have a plan. Be flexible and really discuss exactly what it is you want and what price range you're looking for. You would be amazed at some of these things that our vendor partners can do. All you got to do is talk to them about what your vision is. So Heidi's going to talk a little bit about strategy now.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So after our quick honeymoon, we came up with a strategy, and so there were some specific engineering requirements that Lisa had requested and of us, and Joe and Lisa will talk a little more in depth about that later. Circle K surveyed their stores and provided us all the necessary dimensions for the permanent graphics, so ceiling heights, counter heights, any equipment information we might need. There are some cases we'll look at later that we actually used floor plans for this planning process. And then depending on the scope of the project, we would hold weekly meetings with facility and construction and potentially even the marketing teams at Circle K. So this goes back to that partnership and the planning. And then we would create all the graphics according to the Circle K brand standards. So this required us to create a really extensive toolkit to accommodate any size graphic and keep their brand intact. And then GSP would provide the entire package, so from permanent to semi-permanent signage, which included fixtures, LED lighting, hardware, equipment signage, and down to the POP kits that they receive each month. And then our database was simultaneously tagged with the correct information, so if there was any type of hardware or equipment signage needed later, our database would have the correct store profile information with the accurate data. And then we would package all elements by store and tag those by store to make it easy for the installers to identify. And then our customer service team coordinated with the Circle K installation company based on the installation schedule we were provided. And we typically sent about 10 stores a week, so pretty aggressive schedule and for the duration of the project.
Lisa,
and one of the things I would like...
Oh, excuse me, Lisa. Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things I'd really like to mention is our global brand. So Circle K has a global brand that's really important to us. And while Heidi and her team are working with individual business units, this is the second business unit I have been in with Heidi, we all want to make sure that we align not only our business unit but with our global brand. And GSP was very instrumental in making sure that we had all our nuts and bolts the right way and everything fit together to deliver what we needed in the various size formats of our stores. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, well, thank you, Lisa. Lisa and Heidi, really thank you for talking about how important strategy and partnership are. We all know that that's a key element in success. At GSP, when we define affordable store remodels, one category at a time, we think of it really in three terms. We think of it as the words refresh, replace, and remodel. In terms of what refresh is about, that's really what we're really talking about today. And those are cosmetic changes, very low impact to the store, but a really, really great area of touching and making impact in the brand. And it's less of an investment when you do a refresh. When we talk about replace, that means we're touching equipment and fixturing. Think of it more as a 3D solution. And with remodel, this is where we can either take one category or multiple categories and really think about them as a whole. We can think about the end goals and the future, and really how do we pull that whole brand together. So really with refresh, I'd like to just do a little bit more definition so we're all on the same page. Refresh is really about a low budget but high impact, focusing on the brand, using low-cost materials and execution, custom design solutions to accommodate the existing store environment. It's really what we call the most affordable solution when you're thinking about category reimage.
So here's a great example of what Margaret just mentioned as the definition of refresh. This is where we came in and we focused on just one area category of the store, their fountain. Circle K didn't really have a large budget for the store, but they wanted to make a big brand impact. They weren't really replacing any equipment, so no other remodeling was needed in the store. And we supplied some simple permanent graphics that went on the wall as the wallpaper. We also incorporated their LED logo light. Now we did this backlit, but again, if you wanted a lower cost option, we could do this with different substrates and build something three-dimensional, would not need to be lit up. And then to finish it off, we added some brushed aluminum in the middle of the equipment to give it a more modern look and feel. And if you
and then
look
they
at
add
that, go ahead, Joe.
And then to add what Heidi said is that on the price point, that one of the asks that Lisa had was that this be a changeable part of the rollout. It used to be a decal where they would just layer over and over and over. Well, now it's a magnetic receptive stock with a magnet attached to it. And here in this store, this is another refresh. This was an existing wood element that was over their fountain area with their old logo and old background. So we went in and did a complete refresh of this area where we put a vinyl overlay over the whole entire thing, added a new polar pop, and again, the magnetic price point. And it goes, now we'll talk about the replace, and about replacing old equipment.
Yeah, please continue. Thank you.
Okay. Replacing the old equipment, impact the category environment, and designing for the space. And this is where we came in with some custom engineered solutions. So part of the ask for Lisa as an operations person is to make this accessible for her team. The existing ACM unit was not allowing that. So our team came up with a design that we would mount this frame structure on the back wall, apply all of our graphics to it, but at the same time, make the, as you can see in this lower photo, make the door open and stay open with the safety bars on either side, and make the ice machines accessible. And in addition to that is we have the side panels that are removable, so it allows them to get all around the unit.
And Joe, we do appreciate that. That was one of the things that we really wanted to focus on from a facility standpoint and from operations, as everybody needs to get behind those sometimes. So the removable side doors was a great element that we didn't know until Joe and his team came up with that. So it was something that we asked for, didn't know if we were going to get, and they came through.
And this was our very first unit that we assembled and tested in the manufacturing facility. We later disassembled this unit and installed it. You can see that the door opens. We have the polar pop light there. It's all LED. It's all low voltage. This is one of the elements. You can see the before photo and the after photo. Again, with the door open, this allows, you can see that it allows a maintenance technician to get in there and work on that without having somebody else to stand there and hold it open for them. And this is that unit we saw in the manufacturing facility. Now it's installed, and this was our very first store we did for Lisa and her team in Titusville, Florida. You can see the before and after of that section. This is where they came in and they completely ripped out the cabinets, new fountain machines, everything brand new. And now there's the, Margaret, is this, you want to take over?
Yeah, so now
here?
let me talk quickly. Yeah, thank you. Let me talk about what we call our third tier, which is remodel. So with remodel, when we say remodel, we are talking about multiple categories. At this point, we're thinking bigger. We're thinking all about how the categories work together as a unit and support one another. When we say categories, the primary categories we're touching are normally beverage, coffee, and food. With your overall plan in mind, we can either touch one category, or if it doesn't make sense to just touch one, we can touch them all. I would just tell you that the most important part is to pull all of these key elements together and to really think about integrating all of this for an amazing impact. And when you think about a remodel, there's normally a savings in economy of scale. So please take that and think about how you can accommodate the budgets there. Joe and Heidi, would you just take a moment and really talk about the renders that we're able to produce?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that occasionally we'll get floor plans to plan with instead of just measurements, and obviously this is a bigger scope in the store. So this is Joe and his the visual merchandising team took the floor plan and built this three-dimensional render on top of it. And this is just to give you an overall picture and have them shut some filters off so that you can see that they actually build exact to plan. And so everything is built to scale. All the equipment is built to scale as well. And so this has actually been a really incredible planning tool that we've found, and we've used it on calls earlier. I also mentioned that we plan sometimes with the facilities, construction, and marketing team, and we've done these renders on the phone, and basically the category manager can look at the area and say, hey, I don't like the cappuccino machine there. Can you move it to the other wall and let me know what that looks, and let's see what that looks like. Can you add, put the roller grill behind it? Can you add can you add a chip rack here? And so it's not always about everything that we are putting in the store, but it's a really great planning tool. And sometimes along the way we've found that there's potentially a disconnect between maybe facilities and construction and marketing. So we also have our account manager on the phone, and they're able to, talk with the brand manager and the category manager. We're even planning alongside with our POP kits. So it's been a really extraordinary planning tool. And I think it also then at the end when it's being installed, it gives the installation team a complete picture of the store, and it helps with a flawless execution. And then if you go to the next page, and I'll let Joe talk a little bit more. The only about this, but the one comment I was going to make is if you look at the bottom picture, and that's that panoramic view, this is actually from the front door. So this is what this is what the consumer sees when they walk into your store. And the other really neat thing about this software is we can also do fly-throughs where we could even create some motion to that. So you could turn it to the left and see what the sales counter looks like, and potentially to the right. And so they can actually plan their merchandising from these fly-throughs because you can really going to get the customer journey and experience. So.
And to go back, I'm going to jump back a slide to go to Margaret's point about. I was going to jump back a slide. Going to Margaret's point about multiple categories, see where we've impacted the Froster, the Polar Pop, the Simply Great Coffee, the Good Food Made Fresh, even down to the graphic on the counter across the Good Food Made Fresh. The luxury of having this ability to draw right over the top of the floor plans that the building is being built to is we can go in there and we can size all of our product that we're going to supply right into the store. So when the install happens, it happens simultaneously with the construction crew. And then as you can see as the result of the renders and how everything goes together. As Heidi said, it's a really great tool for the marketing team, and we pour over this over several meetings and until we get it right for them, down to even the signage and the graphics above the coffee area and in the frames. And then here are some render versus reality of the store. This was a store we did in Thomaston, Georgia for the Circle K South Atlantic region. And so we were able to go in there, look at, here's what the Simply Great Coffee is going to look like. Here's where it comes before the coffee letters are up there. But we, as you can see, we can place all the equipment around and move it. Again, here's the render on the left and the reality on the right. It's very close to walking in the store and knowing what it's going to look like before you actually walk into the store.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Really, with all of what we've talked about, in our opinion from GSP, it's really all in the details. Everything happens. I just can't stress how important it is to work together as a team, to know your brand, to really talk and discuss the details that are involved, all the way down to due dates and time frames. So really so important. And Joe, you're a big part of that. Can you just walk us through what some of those details would be? Because it's all about building success for the client.
Sure. Here where we are. While we did the structure and we tested all that, it doesn't stop there because every single one of these stores is unique. The height is different. It's based on the ceiling. Sometimes the width is different. If it's a 10-foot or a 12-foot, or I think a 10-foot or 11-foot. But the critical part and where we align with the global team at Circle K is that Polar Pop logo needs to go in the same spot for every store. You'll see a placement guide up in the upper left-hand corner above the 59-inch area, and that's how we get our placement. That's 3.5 inches, 3.5 inches from the left, 3.5 inches down. And on the far right of that, above where it says 31, there's a dotted line there that has our price point, and that price point is in a certain spot. And there's a guide that in the manufacturing process, we make sure that spot is in the same place all the time. And then we also create a parts list for our manufacturing part of it. And then moving on is we take it in from assembly to the installation. This first photo here is the installation of our very first unit that we showed earlier in Titusville, Florida. And down below, we provide all those installation guides. While we worked with this team, this was their very first one. Of course, we were proofing our installation guides. So we make sure what actually is going to happen in the field actually is illustrated in our installation guides.
Joe, who's that guy standing on that ladder right there? That really thin guy.
That's some old ball guy.
That's some old ball
so
guy.
We were very into our work. So I was up on the ladder doing this, and I'm guessing Heidi can probably confirm this was about 4 o'clock in the morning the very first
Somewhere
one we
around
did.
there.
So,
Somewhere
somewhere around
Circle K's team likes to install in the middle of the night.
but I think
All
we
right.
turn it back to Steve here for some Q&A.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. We'll move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. As a reminder for you listeners, you can ask a question anytime using the Q&A widget on your screen. First, let me say it's great to be able to see the pictures of these projects before, during, and after. Thank you, all of you, for sharing those. I think that really opens your eyes to what can be done, which is great. And I think the lead-off question here is, for a category refresh like this, what's the return on investment?
Well, I mean, I'll take a stab at that. So basically, you know, depending on what category you are, our ROI on, let's say, a fountain, we were about a 22% ROI after we did our refresh. And that was just on a refresh. And that's not to mention the other categories that also had an impact because of that, you know, salty snacks, etc. So I think, again, it depends on where you're located, you know, where your stores are, what your customer base is. But we got double-digit growth out of our refreshes on our Polar Pop.
That's awesome. Congrats on that. Kind of follow up on that. So you're lucky with Circle K that you do have well-known brands like Polar Pop and Froster. What if I'm a retailer and I don't have that? Does GSP help with that?
Oh, absolutely, Steve. Thanks for asking. Yes, we're a full-service design team, and we know your brand. We get to develop brand. We actually can move from concept to execution. When our designers are designing, the goal is to bring your brand to life in store. So I would tell you we are a one-stop shop. Thank you for asking.
Just to add to that a little bit, while in this project we were not the final installer, we have the ability to go from concept to installation as well. So we can take it the full distance.
Great. To that point, so what's the timeline for finishing a project from planning to remodeling a whole store?
Well, so I think from planning, in our case, from planning to the execution, we were probably 2 to 3 weeks, you know, and again, that was some pre-work involved in that. But once we got our signage in and all of our nuts and bolts in, it was about a 12-hour turnaround for a refresh. We did it overnight for minimal disruption of our customers. And then up to a remodel, you know, it depends right on how much you're doing. So I would say 12 hours to refresh, up to, you know, 1 to 2 weeks on a remodel. But if it's just in a refresh, it's actually very quick. They kind of gave us everything in a kit. We put it up. Very easy to understand. Went up very easy. So, you know, 12 hours minimum.
Oh, impressive. And GSP, do you manage the process?
Joe, why don't you take that one?
Yes. We do manage the process. Whether we are the actual company that is doing the install, we will oversee the install. As you saw that, you know, I was out there, Heidi was out there, our project manager Sarah was out there while we were doing this first rollout. So we are very in tune with what was going on in the field. We were all available when the installers, even though they work for Circle K, were calling us direct with questions. So Lisa and her team, and you know, oversaw all of that. But GSP can definitely take everything to fruition.
Great. And in the case, there's a question here from a listener. In the case of a full remodel, what kind of time frame are we talking about?
Is that from the planning stage to the end of the remodel, or is it just the execution stage? I guess I can answer both. So again, from your planning stage all the way to the end, depending, again, on what your scope of work is. You're looking probably anywhere from about 2 weeks to 4 weeks, again, depending on what that scope of work is. But for the, signage and the items that GSP did, it was a pretty quick turnaround, and I know I had them on a really strict schedule, and they work with us very well from our refreshes to our remodels. Anytime we need something, we just contact them, and they can kind of get it to us quickly. But I think our longest remodel, it was probably about 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say, this is Heidi, I would say that in some of those cases when it was a large project like an NTI, some of the elements or planning might go in stages. So there's times where we may break it off and send some supplies to get installers going, and then they're on feed the graphics as they go, because a lot going on in an NTI, even a remodel. So there's kind of chaos everywhere, and so helps with things not getting lost, and then them being able to go ahead and work ahead on some things while some of other things potentially are in production or development.
Sure, and there's a question here about the cost of a full remodel, but I imagine that's kind of a sliding scale depending on what you're doing, correct?
Correct.
So absolutely, yeah. I mean, your scope of work will determine your project cost.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can phrase it this way. If I come to you and want a remodel done, should I come to you and say, here's what I want, tell me what it'll cost, or should I say, here's how much money I have, what can you do? What's the better approach?
Well, I mean, obviously working with a budget is key. I think that as you saw, we have showed you the different levels, and so knowing what the budget is would help us plan for which level we wanted to achieve. Obviously, the budget, then we can work within that easier.
Right, and I'd just love to add one thing, and that is there are no two stores alike, and you may want to really think about taking one of your key stores and using that as a prototype and really building that up and making that your showcase, and then taking those elements that build the brand, taking those out and really developing more of and I don't know the other words other than a good, better, best type of rollout. And that is some of your legacy stores, they may only want a refresh, a cosmetic, and then you may want to take some of that brand and really layer it on a little bit more. So really you have all gamuts of how to pull the brand together, and yet it's one look and one feel.
And to add to that is we can take elements from different levels and do different stores at different levels. If you have a high traffic store you want to spend a little bit more on, you put a couple more elements in there from what Margaret said, the best. If you have a low volume store, you're going to use, not spend as much money, and then you have those middle grade stores. So it's kind of an a la carte system, and typically we will, be able to do that, put some of those elements in each one of those areas. Sounds good.
Someone asked what NTI stands for. We're talking about new to industry stores there, I believe, right? And then
Correct.
Another listener who's kind of digging in here. If the retailer is working with GSP, is the retailer providing the drawings to local and county boards, or are you guys doing that? Can you talk through the process a little there as far as permits, et cetera?
Lisa, you might have a little more insight on how you guys handle that.
Sure. So when it comes to the very initial stages, all of our renderings and kind of after we have those discussions on what we want to do, we work with GSP. But as far as permitting stage, the permitting stage and what we need for local municipalities, we do that on our own. We take care of that. We go out. We have a person that does that for us just to make sure that we're all in line. At the end of the day, our name's going to be on that banner, so we just need to make sure that we're taking care of it the right way. And we know the local municipalities a little bit better than some of our vendor partners. So, but we absolutely take care of that ourselves.
All right, very good. It looks like we're through all the questions that were submitted. With that, I'll hand it back to Lisa if you have any final comments you want to make.
Absolutely. So there's a comment Heidi made earlier, and I kind of chuckled a little bit, and she says sometimes there's disagreements between marketing and facilities or operations. Now, Heidi, you know that never, ever happens. But this is one of it's very important for renders, right? So everybody can see kind of what they want in the store. Everybody has their opinions, and it gives us a vision, and it helps everything come together. So I think that's a really important part of what they can provide. The other kind of I want to touch upon is your pre-work and your open discussions prior to the project are vital. It saves a lot of time on the back end and sometimes even in the middle, but you got to have a plan. And, you have to look at not only what you want now, what your current needs are, but what are your future needs? If you want to get the full impact of the project, what do you want now and what do you want later? You may be able to build on the elements that you have now without having to replace or refurbish anything by doing that. I'm in facilities and I'm a money person, so I want to know where am I going to get the biggest bang for my buck, right? And I think that any partnership that you have with a vendor and a client, again, like I said, it's like a marriage. The honeymoon phase has to be short in duration to get where you need to be. But don't be afraid to challenge yourself, not only what you want in your own project, but what you want from them. You would be surprised at what they can do if you just ask them. You have a vision, let them know what that vision is. And you're going to be able to let them know whether or not that's affordable to you and your budget constraints. But don't be afraid to ask that. And know that you can get the same impact, whatever you want, on various budget constraints. So you could have a small budget, a medium budget, a large budget, whatever budget constraints you have. Ask them, tell them, this is what I want, and this is what I like to see, and they can help with that. GSP has been a great vendor partner, and putting up with our quirks, mainly mine. They're mostly my quirks, and spec changes, which we have quite a few. And I really appreciate them and the great team that I've had the pleasure to work with over these last several years in 2 different business units. But at the end of the day, I think remodels, refreshes, replace, whatever you want to call it, it's just knowing that you can get what you want and it can be affordable. I want to thank everyone that was on this call, the presenters, the participants on the webinar. Special shout out to Steve from CSP and Margaret from GSP, who tried hard to keep us in line, and sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. But I want everybody to have a great day and stay out of trouble.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, GSP. For CSP, this is Steve Holtz. We'll see you next time.